We want to dig in on this new deal that Ottawa signed with Beijing with John Manley, former finance minister, chair now of Jeffries Securities. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Marilla.
So first impression of the scope of the agreement.
Well, I think it's an introductory phase. The scope is perhaps a little broader than we feared. It's not by any means what some people would call a free trade or a comprehensive trade agreement. But I think that it's the important signal here is that it's reopening the government-to-government relationship between Canada and China in a way that will support and enhance increased trade.
Okay, let's talk about some of the details. So winners, of course, are clear. Canola, Canadian seafood, but a lot of concern, as you know, in Ontario's auto industry about the Chinese EVs. Is their concern warranted?
Well, I think that they're concerned that this is a bit of a thin edge of the wedge. And I understand the urge to speak out in protection of an industry that is, in fact, very vital to Ontario and to Canada. But I think when you look at the details, first of all, it's not a huge number of vehicles. They're all EVs. Increasingly, some of the manufacturers are moving away from making those. They're at a low price point, below the average cost of vehicles in Canada right now. And therefore, they're not actually competing with anything that's made in Canada. So are they going to take a share of the market? Perhaps, but that's not tomorrow. It's going to take them time. They don't have distribution channels in Canada. They don't have repair and maintenance facilities. And I think that they've got a long way to go. So, I think the test here, Marilla, is should Canadian consumers be given the option of acquiring these vehicles? And it's not just about the producers, it's also about the broad population. And I think that if the consumers don't want them, they won't buy them.
Do you think Ottawa should have secured dollar amount investments in the industry here to allow the Chinese EVs to come in? Because they're not being built here.
Would it be desirable? Yes. Was it a realistic objective? Probably not at this stage. We've shut the market. There aren't any of these, BYD vehicles in Canada at the moment, and so I think if you would look at it just from the point of view not of the Chinese but of any investor, if you're going to build something in a market like Canada, you want to know that there is a market for your product. We did this decades ago with the Japanese when Toyotas and Hondas started being imported to Canada, and they had built market share before they opened their factories and facilities. So I think it's not unreasonable to expect that the Chinese would want to take a look and see whether the Canadian market is open to their product.
Do you have concerns about Canada being more open to Chinese investment?
I think that, the late, great foreign minister and minister of other things, Mark Garneau, our first astronaut, said it well when he said that it's eyes wide open. So I think we have to examine foreign investment, not just based on from where it comes, but also increasingly based on whether it affords the investor a control point in the Canadian economy that should cause us concern. And increasingly, we're not in the world that we were in, 10 years ago. We're in a world in which we've got to look out for ourselves. We've got to know that we can produce the things that Canada needs in order to be able to maintain our independence, our sovereignty, and our economy. So I think we should be open to Chinese investment, but I think that we need to give careful scrutiny to any proposed investments and assess whether we think that the target is warranted, whether the investment is going to produce a benefit for Canadians, and whether it creates any kind of supply chain or other choke point that we would find difficult to live with.
Are you surprised then that Donald Trump has initially said he supports this?
Well, am I ever surprised by something Donald Trump does or say? I'd say he's completely unpredictable. So I've stopped being surprised by it. Did I expect him to say that? I think it would have been more likely that he grumble about it, and as some of his officials have. But I also have a sneaking suspicion that in the next few weeks, we're going to see some kind of trade agreement between China and the United States. So, Donald Trump has never been afraid of contradicting himself, in the same period of time, not sometimes in the same sentence, but I think he maybe has in mind that he's hoping to get a deal with China as well, and it would be a peculiar message to send in advance of that.
Are you surprised that energy wasn't part of this agreement? I mean, that would have been an obvious. We look at China and think they have a great need for our energy products.
Well, I think they want them, and I think we know that they want them. And I don't think that they are inhibiting their import to China in any way. So there's nothing really to agree to. The challenge is on our side. We've got to be able to produce the product and get it to them. And if we can do that, I don't think there's going to be any hesitation in their acquisition of energy products from Canada. And we should be looking at their strengths in the alternative energy areas as opposed to our conventional energy. I mean, they own the production of solar, for example. They are very strong in wind power. Their ability to really leapfrog in renewable energies and in nuclear is nothing short of impressive. So we've got things to learn from them as well.
All right, John Manley, got to leave it there, sir. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.